What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction, back with some more Morten Harket, and I'm very excited. We're going to start listening to some Morten's non-English material. Indeed, I wanted to give a big thank you to Sophia. She mentioned, or she reached out and asked if I had had access to Morten's non-English albums, and to the best of my knowledge, I didn't. Now, a couple people have shared Morten's material with me, but as far as I knew at that point, I didn't have access to his non-English albums. So she reached out and was able to facilitate me getting access to these albums. So once again, big thank you to Sophia. And we're going to listen to his album Poetenes Evangelium, which is a Latin phrase meaning like the gospel, or the divine word is powerful. Ultimately, it speaks to what I now am increasingly understanding is Morten's sort of spirituality and his expression of it through his artistic creativity, his musical creativity. Ultimately, we're going to listen to the first song, which is called Natten. I'm not sure if that's how you say it. I think in not only Norwegian, but like Danish and maybe a couple other Scandinavian languages, I believe it means night or the night, perhaps. So yeah, again, I listen to a lot of music. I'm interested in all music that I encounter, but I will say I do listen to a lot of Japanese music, and the reason that's relevant, as I mentioned a couple times before, is I'm not fluent in Japanese. I do know a lot of words. I've been watching Japanese shows for a long time, so I know like a lot of nouns, and I know something about sentence structure and the use of honorifics and the sort of the way in which different honorifics are used in different contexts. But the point is I'm not fluent, and I do listen to Japanese music. So the idea of me not being able to understand everything that's being said here, or in the case of Norwegian, basically nothing that is being said, is not a deterrent to me. I'm still interested in how this will sound. I'm still interested in Morten's voice, and indeed, I have one of my mentors in grad school is a German professor from Bavaria. I forget what city specifically, but he's a Bayern Munich fan. I don't think he's actually from Munich, but yeah, I think he's a Bayern Munich fan. Nevertheless, he did say to me one time when we were talking like after class, and he was saying, well, German, it's famously, or like is regarded by many as being a harsh kind of like consonant-driven, sort of rough-sounding language. He's like, but people who say that, maybe some of them haven't heard sung German, and his contention is that German sung has a much more kind of lyrical and sonically pleasing feel to it than it can maybe with some people speaking in a gruff voice, where it might sound more stereotypical in the way that it is kind of negatively regarded in that sense. So I'm curious to hear what Norwegian might sound like in a sung capacity. I've never known anyone who speaks Norwegian fluently, but I did date a Danish woman many years ago, and she was fluent in Danish, and sort of talked to me and sort of told me some like words and sort of some phrasing. And then I remember one time we were at a restaurant, and like she said something in Danish, and there was a guy sitting there who was fluent in Swedish, and he said something to her, and she told me later that it wasn't perfect. There were moments where she wasn't quite sure if what he was saying meant this or that, but they basically conversed in two different languages because there's like they have a similar linguistic history. So bottom line, I'm interested in languages. I'm interested in how different languages will sound in a musical context. So with all that in tow, let's get it. This is Morten Harket. The tune is Natten, although I don't know if you pronounce it that way. Maybe it's Natten. But either way, it's from his Poetenes Evangelium album, which again in Latin means like the gospel is power, or the power of the gospel. I guess the gospel is powerful is probably the best translation. Either way, this is Morten Harket. The tune is Natten, and it's from his 1993 album Poetenes Evangelium.
som skal komme fra himmelen ikke bare sne. Natten i natt hellig. Noen skal dø i natt. Vi sa det var så mat. Spirer himmel i isen. Der gaten blank og glatt.
Kind of organ feel.
Natten i natt hellig. Noen skal fødes i natt. Vår mørke, kjølige klode
Singing with power.
ikke helt forlatt. Fra hennes lysende søsken
Cellos and violins.
i natt.
Very atmospheric too. What a beautiful track. Number one, the beginning like arrested me so immediately, in part because number one, I'm a big fan of classical music. If you've been following the channel for a while, you're probably aware I have a classical music playlist. And yeah, it's probably the earliest musical influence of anything. Like even before I heard Depeche Mode, which I heard when I was like 2, 3 years old, you know, like 82, 83, as soon as I was old enough to remember things. But my dad was listening to a lot of classical music when I was growing up, and I think my very earliest musical memories are like hearing Beethoven and Mozart. So yeah, number one, it had a classical flavor, but it also had kind of like a score, symphonic incidental music kind of feel, which again, I listen to a lot of soundtrack and score music, multiple reaction playlists on the channel here. So there were multiple sort of elements of that opening bit that just immediately had me super excited. It felt kind of like a nighttime vibe. It did feel like the strings especially were establishing sort of an atmosphere that felt like night to me as we hear fireworks go off outside. It was pouring rain yesterday on New Year's Eve, and I feel like there were a lot of people who probably bought fireworks and didn't get to use them because it was just sopping wet outside, so perhaps they're trying to make up for it this evening. Nevertheless, a really cool track. Once again, shout out to Sophia. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to go through this part of his catalog, probably in conjunction as I keep going through, in conjunction with the English material too. But bottom line, really cool start to this. Let me know what you think. I will see you next time. Peace.